I wanted to give a little bit more help with slightly more complex flowcharts. So I've chosen this function that I wrote, this typical menu kind of function. It keeps going round and round, so it's got a while loop. So you keep asking your questions until you finally exit. And it's also got some if statements. So that sort of if statement inside a while loop, relatively complex, worth going through here. I've started over here. I've started in my function, I initialize a variable's value. This is the typical thing to do. So typically you initialize that as a box here. I like to do initialize variables and then give a list of the variables that I've set up with the values that I've given them, only one in this case. Then I've started to do the loop. Obviously this is wrong because I've got a decision box that's only got one exit. I need to have a yes and a no. I'm going to deal with that later, kind of build it up. Also, of course, being a while structure, I've got this while that goes from here down to here, the matching brace, and then I'll need to come back up to here. I haven't written that part of the flowchart yet, so I do know I'm going to have an arrow that comes back round to denote there is a loop going on. So I've got menu choice equals, I've got a prompt to ask what I'm doing. So I've done this as this parallelogram, which is how I denote input and output statements. There are other ones that you can do. If you look down here, you could be inputting or outputting in all kinds of different ways, but I find that actually adds complexity to trying to make sense of a flowchart. I find them easier to read if I use a relatively limited number of flowchart symbols. So the ones you see here is pretty much all the ones that you will ever use. So I say here, I put the prompt and then I say what happens to the return value from that. I've said that I've got a little arrow with a hyphen and a greater than sign. It puts it into this variable menu choice. I'm sure there's other ways that you could communicate exactly what's happening there that would be perfectly valid. That one works for me. We're not too fussed about what you do so long as it's communicated clearly. That's the key. So now we're down into this if statement. If menu choice equals 1, then if that's true, we go to the view endorsement function. Super. What I've got a problem with here is at the moment, view endorsement, it calls this function, but then it carries on with the program. But in my flowchart, it's just dangling in midair. That's going to need to go somewhere. And as it's an else if, we'll be really accurate. I think you probably get away with it if you did it slightly differently, but I'm going to be really accurate with this. As this is an else if, it doesn't actually ask this question. This has been evaluated as true, so it's not going to check these things. What it's going to do is go all the way down to this one, is the end of the if statement. So my arrow from here is going to go all the way down to the bottom. I haven't got a place for it yet, so I'm going to leave that dangling for the moment, but just be aware that is going to happen. So I'm going to do the next else ifs instead. So I do know Control C, Control V, and pick the right cursor. That was really not what I wanted, was it? Why did it do that? I'm going to have to drag them down separately. What's going on now even? What is going on? What's happening there? Oh dear. I have to do my arrows again, aren't I? That's all right, it's not hard. Just as long as we make sure that we remember to put the labels on them. This was a yes, and this one is going to be coming down here as a no. Really important we do label these things up, and then we're going to go from here to here again as a yes. And then the final one, again, we're just going to copy this, Control C, Control V. I've left myself a lot of space here. Thank you, got the whole thing this time. I left myself a lot of space. I often find that my flowcharts are big and sprawly to begin with, and everything's not lined up. And then the final process is just tidying that up and getting everything aligned. So this is going to go down to here. I've got these 3 dangling in midair. This menu choice equals 3. Oh, I should have changed that to a 2, shouldn't I? Change that to a 2. Change this one to a 3. And then this doesn't call a separate function. What it does instead, it does a process, which is this one, which is to say things like set finished equals true. So to show that I'm setting the value of that variable. And then we've got, we do actually have a final, don't we? Why is it not? So finished equals true. And then the final is, let's think of the, break this down here. Yeah. The final, this is the final else, is actually, oh, it's not a decision, is it? The final thing is that we say, what's the wrong shape box? I do love doing flowcharts, always fighting things like this. So this is a alert mistake. Again, I don't need to put every little detail, I don't need to put this entire sentence in there. I'm just indicating what is happening in the flowchart. The idea of the flowchart is supposed to be a planning tool that shows the overall structure. It doesn't need to match every single detail, but it certainly must match the flow of your program. So anything that's condition, where you've got braces and indentation in your code, you're going to see that as decision boxes and things moving around. Now, I said it was going to be an else if. So what's going to happen is all of these ones down here are going to finally join up. So because we didn't ask this else if, we didn't ask this one, we didn't ask this one, they're all going to join up down the bottom. So to make life easy for myself, I'm going to put a connector box right down the bottom here. They're all going to come down here. So this one, set finished equals true, comes to here. This is going to be such a fight to make it look okay, because all of these lines are going to overlap and go in the wrong place and are just not a lot of fun. Is that joining up yet? Yeah, that's about right. And then I just got to drag them around a bit to make them behave. This is just the kind of fun stuff that you do when you're working with flowchart diagrams. Yeah, we're not going to mark you down for messy stuff. We are looking for the conceptual thinking. We want to be certain that you understand the overall flow of your program and that your flowchart matches that. It's about computational thinking. So if you've got hideous stuff like this going on, it makes absolutely no difference to your mark. Anyway, so finally we got down to the bottom. We've finished all our ifs and else ifs. And we need to go back up to the top. So I'm going to draw a line all the way back up to this initial question, the while. And it's just being a pig. Join up there, that's good. Yeah, super. And just super. Why did it do that? Right, just check that that looks about right. It does. Okay, so that is actually a fairly accurate measure. Or I see that I've got a dangling thing. So this is one of those errors that does get you marked down. I've got this final alert down here, and the program carries on from there, and it carries on to the exact same place as all these others down to this connector down the bottom here. And that is the correct overall shape of the whole thing now. So just to reiterate the typical mistakes that we see when we're marking these, we will see decision boxes that have either one output, which is wrong, or more than two outputs, like 3. That's also wrong. Every decision box has 2 outputs only, because every question has an answer which is only yes or no. If you're asking a question in one of these decision boxes that doesn't have a yes or no answer, then you have not accurately reflected what your program does, because any programming language can only answer two questions, a question with 2 answers, either yes or no. So this finished equals false is yes or no. Menu choice equals 1 is yes or no, nothing else. And then the other thing that we see is bits of your flowchart that dangle incorrectly, like these were doing when I first was here, or this was doing as an example a moment ago. Either that, or they just don't connect up to the correct thing that happens next afterwards. It's pretty typical. that's pretty much all we wanted. I just thought because this is a relatively complex if statement with all these else ifs, I thought I'd just clarify that most if statements are not that complex. So here's an example. Where is it? I had it a moment ago. Give me a second. I'm sure I had it open. I had written it. Maybe it's here. There it is. It's over here. For some reason it's opened up on another screen. I found it. Here's a more typical if statement. I've got an if, else, and then it's all over. And this would be the structure that matches this. If this thing is true, if the thing happened, yes, alert, it happened. Else, no, it didn't happen. And then we join back up and we carry on with the rest of the program. So that's a more typical if statement structure. And this one is the more complex else if structure. Good luck.